welcome to Ampp Annual Conference and Expo. We're here at Inspenet TV, and I have two very prestigious guests. We're actually really honored to have them with us. Bob Chalker, current CEO of Ampp, and Alan Thomas, incoming CEO of Ampp, starting in April, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to Inspenet. We're going to go over a few questions, learn more about this show and about the future.
Sounds good.
And yeah, anyway, thanks for being here. Bob, maybe you can give us a quick background about yourself, how long you've been with Ampp.
So I've been with Ampp, it'll be 13 years this June. You know, it's always a lot of work to get the shows done. We've already started to work on the 2024 show. It's laid out, it's planned, and we're selling exhibits, so you're working a couple years ahead. We're really excited about this year's show because it is now, it's back and even bigger, and has a lot more papers and exhibits than we had even prior to COVID. So this was the show we envisioned when we did the merger to create Ampp. And of course, COVID came along and took that out. And last year was great, but we didn't have the international visitation. But we have 700 people registered from the international community. I just checked a few minutes ago, we have 5,500 people registered as we sit here today, and that still continues to grow. It's a success, and it really does take a tremendous amount of work. It's a huge number of both staff and volunteers that are needed to make it successful. So.
Well, congratulations, first of all. You know, it's really an accomplishment, and just walking through the hall today, you know, on day one after the inauguration last night, it's really a great show. And on the first night, on Sunday night, I talked to Leslie, and she said she's hoping for 6,000
We
people.
are still hoping for 6,000, yes. So,
and she also mentioned there's more than 400 companies.
There's more than 400 companies exhibiting and sponsoring. Yep, absolutely.
Well,
hundreds of papers. I don't remember the exact number. I don't know if Alan remembers the number. I don't remember the number, but it's several hundred papers being presented. Yeah, just about every measure we have. You set a goal for every event, right? And you set measures in different categories. We've succeeded every one of those measures for this year, so we're thrilled.
Well, Bob, congratulations, and Alan, you know, Bob is really setting the bar really high,
very high
for next year. But Alan, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and essentially what led you to take on the role of incoming CEO.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, by the way. So I have a background that's a mixture of both association management. I've worked in the association field for about 15, 16 years in a leadership role. And then I went to the private sector, and I've worked in various different industries. I've worked in the private equity space for some time. But most importantly, and what I like to bring to the membership is I did own and operate a coatings applicator company for about 7 years. And so I know firsthand what a lot of our members deal with. I know what they deal with from a business owner standpoint, and also from an actual standards following standpoint, and having to deal with media and paint guns and all the fun that come along with blast nozzles and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Spent some good time with some of our exhibitors last night. But more importantly, it was just to your question about what brought me here. Yeah. I believe it was just a convergence of a lot of things that came together at the right time and the right place. I truly believe it's my purpose to be here. I've never felt more welcome. I've never felt more in a perfect fit to be able to serve and to add as much value as I can as I do with Ampp right now. Each of these instances just, to me, confirms that I'm in the exact right place at the exact right time. And I just look forward to carry on the traditions that Bob has put in place, and again, try to meet that bar next year, or maybe even raise it a little bit more as we go forward.
You know, I have to say something, and I've said this in a couple introductions. If the board would have come to me and said, give me the characteristics, the skill sets, the knowledge, the ability that you would want in your successor, and lay them out, I would have done that, and it would have looked a lot like his resume. But I also would have said, you're never going to find that person, because to find somebody who has 15 years of association experience and then coatings industry experience, I thought I was the only one that fit that queue, right? You know, so that almost made it like you're not going to find them. And what's even more bizarre is we didn't know each other. I don't know how we've played in the same circles for so long and didn't know each other. But he's exactly the person that the organization needs next.
Guys, I wanted to go over a few questions that we have from the Inspenet team. Bob, why don't you take this first one? Ampp is formed as a result of a merger between NACE International and SSPC. what have you seen are the main benefits, or what that resulted from this merger?
Well, you know, when we first started discussing the merger, the first thing is to recognize that the two organizations, although in the minds of many people they were seen as competitors, and truthfully that is even within the staff and the leadership, we looked at each other as friendly competitors. We had relationships with each other that were positive and friendly, but at the same time we were competing in a few areas. But the reality is, the majority of the areas we were more complementary than we were competitive. And so by coming together, it's the proverbial 1 + 1 = 3. And in fact, I said to one of my staff today, we're actually literally starting to see that here now. All the advocacy, for example, the ability to carry the voice of the industry to Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., or for that matter, to governments around the world and to industry. Alone, we weren't capable to do it. In fact, we created confusion because actually I had a customer in the Middle East tell me, why should I believe what you tell me? SSPC was just in here a week ago and they said theirs is the best thing. So we were creating unnecessary confusion. Now we have a clarity of message. We're capitalizing on each other's strengths, and the industry's better off because of it. It really is. The money, instead of spending money on putting two shows together, we put one great show together and then use that money to have better content management systems, or to do advocacy around the world, or to create new publications. No longer just about competing, but it's about expanding and growing and serving the industry.
In recent years, there's been increasing attention given to the impact of corrosion and materials degradation on infrastructure and the environment. How does Ampp address these concerns?
This is an area where bringing the two organizations together is paying off. But what we did when we created the organization of Ampp, we gave a whole new charter to our technical program committee, and it's about engaging and serving the public. So we now have the ability and we know how to activate quickly and to respond to concerns, issues, et cetera, in a timely manner to bring technical expertise to it. Because so often it's politicians or government officials trying to make really difficult decisions, or for that matter, media people doing reporting that without the technical expertise. And we weren't good at that in the past. Now we've got a methodology through the technical program committee that right now, we're still somewhat in a reactive mode. We're prepared to respond. You know, when the condo collapsed in Florida, we responded to that. We're now starting to move to being proactive. Like, what are the things that could happen, and how do we get in front of that and start to educate and provide that expertise to the people who need to know it? And recognizing that we've got to do it in a layman's terms, not just in the scientific terms, so that it doesn't get lost in the language. You got to speak the language of the customer.
Ampp provides training and certification programs to professionals in the corrosion materials industries. How do these programs support the industry's needs, and what do you see as the future of professional development in the field?
We have such an incredible body of knowledge that lives within Ampp and our members that there's no shortage of subject matter experts that are cutting edge. I'll borrow a phrase from Bob that I've really liked in the last few days, is that we are the original sustainability group of body of knowledge, as our members have been striving towards that end since day one of the inception of both legacy organizations, for that matter. So we have a tremendous body of knowledge. We have great participation that happens through our committee process and through our volunteer leadership process. We had one of the most fun moments of the conference so far was the night we got to spend with our instructors from around the world to honor them and celebrate them, and just hear their stories and their passion for spreading that knowledge and that training across the globe in multiple languages, and then just trying to figure out how to do it better and more and bigger and really make an impact for our mission and our members around the world.
But what do you see as the most pressing challenges? What are threats, either current threats or future threats facing the corrosion and material industry in the coming years? And how does Ampp, or how is Ampp already working to address these challenges, or how will they address these challenges?
Probably one of the greatest challenges that I believe they face is a workforce that's trained and qualified and ready to work on a global scale to meet the needs that our profession is seeing. If you look at the global economy and the forecast The CapEx expenditure forecast for infrastructure around the globe is double digits for the next few years. And quite frankly, what we're hearing is there's not enough workforce to meet that demand.
But I think another one that our industry faces is, first of all, an awareness that we exist,
sure.
and that you don't have to let your asset fail, but there are cost-affordable ways to prevent it. But the other is, a lot of the work that our members do to prevent corrosion, I compare it to insurance. Nobody wants to write that check to buy insurance because 99.9% chance you're not going to need to use it. The insurance companies, they bank on that, right? They know. And so, you know, you're a CFO of a major corporation or a business leader who's trying to make decisions of how you're going to spend your money, and somebody comes along and says, well, you need to recoat a bridge that looks perfectly fine, or a water tower that it looks great, but if you don't do it now, you wait till it looks bad, then it's going to fail. It's just a mentality that maintenance is always something, is an expense that nobody wants to pay. So we've got to do a better job of an industry of building the business case for, and I think it's something that now that we are Ampp and we're moving from the merger work, which was significant and time consuming, to doing the work of Ampp, this is something that Ampp could really help with, is helping build that business case of why you want to have a cathodic protection system or redo your coatings or have somebody on your staff who's trained and qualified to evaluate this. I think that's a big part of it as well. He mentioned about our members need qualified workforce, and they do. Our organization needs qualified volunteers to come volunteer. This work is done. We have a staff, yes, we have a good sized staff, but we are not technical experts. We are experts in putting on conferences like this and editing documents. We are not subject matter experts on corrosion prevention. That's all of you out there who are listening to this. Go to the Ampp website. There's a place to volunteer. It's a volunteer board, but it's a job board. It lists the volunteer opportunities, and submit your name and participate. Get involved in writing technical standards. Get involved in serving on the education committee or task forces. We have options that spend just a few hours a year or you can be extremely committed for many years. That's not saying everybody has to be, hours and hours of work, but we're not successful if we don't have volunteers to do the hard work.
Luckily, there's 6,000 people here to choose from. So hopefully you guys get some more signups. Sorry, and you mentioned they can go directly to the Ampp website?
Yep, www.ampp.org.
Yeah, volunteer, super important. It's what gets these shows and essentially what gets this whole industry moving. Alan, Bob, thank you so much for your time. Alan, congratulations
Thank you.
on your incoming, on your new position.